The recording has started.
Thank you very much. Okay, croeso, prynawn da, welcome and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first meeting of this Strategic Planning Subcommittee. Just to make you aware, this meeting will be recorded. Please ensure that your microphones are switched to mute unless speaking, and that all mobile phones are switched off. If you have any questions during the meeting, please raise your electronic hand. Agenda item 2 this afternoon is declarations of interest. So can I ask members if they have any declarations of interest to declare in regards to the agenda items for this meeting, please? And Chloe, perhaps you can have a look around to see if any hands have gone up.
I see no indication, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 3 are the terms of reference, which you'll find in your agenda packs on pages 3 to 8. Craig Griffiths is not on the call, but if there are any questions from members, he is easily being able to be dialed in. So the terms of reference are attached to the agenda pack for noting. They were provided to the Corporate Joint Committee along with the other subcommittee terms of reference back in October 2022. The document sets out the overarching aim of the subcommittee, along with the functions and makeup of the committee. So can I ask members with the terms of reference that you can see, if you have any questions on the terms of reference, please? I don't see any.
I see no indication, Chair.
Thanks, Chloe. The report is for information purposes and only needs to be noted by the committee. So can I please ask the members of the committee to show their hands if they're happy to note the terms of reference? Yeah, that's anonymous.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, I'll move on to agenda item 4, which is the strategic planning update presentation that you'll find again on your information packs on pages 9 to 14. We have a presentation to update us on this strategic planning and the work surrounding the strategic development plan. So I will now bring in Nicola Gandhi to start the presentation and introduce it. So following the presentation, obviously, if members have any questions, you can raise your hands at that time. So over to you, Nicola, please. Oh, before I come to you, Nicola, Louise, you've got your hand up?
Yes, sorry, Chair. I've just had an email from Nicola to say she's having the same technical issue with her sound. So I think she's trying to sort it and come back to us.
Well, thank you for that. There we are. I weren't very observant. There's so many faces on the screen. I thought she was here. We had a pre-briefing earlier, and Nicola has been having difficulty with the sound on her laptop. She had to go off 3 times, so hopefully she will come in now, because it's vital she gives us that presentation. Chloe, I think I can go to agenda item 5 while we wait, if that's acceptable to all members. Otherwise, we'd just be sitting here twiddling our thumbs waiting for Nicola. So
yep, that's fine, Chair.
That's fine.
Yep, you can move to forward work programme, because obviously we're going to have to deal with that at some point anyway in the meeting. So if you do deal with that first, we can try and get Nicola back in to start.
If you can work hard to get Nicola back in, and I'll just take this to members. So agenda item 5 would have come after the strategic planning update, but it's the forward work programme and it's on pages 15 to 16. Again, this document here for noting, and at this stage I'll have officers if they have anything to add. As you know, this is our first meeting anyway, so very, very early in the work that this subcommittee is going to undertake. So there's not an awful lot at this moment in time. But Chloe, did you want to add anything? I see Nicola back. Nicola, try your sound first. So unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Right. Brilliant. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Before I bring you in, we've moved forward to the forward work programme. So we nearly finished with that, and I'll come back to you straight away then. So Chloe, on the forward work programme, about the documents and the frequency of meetings, would you like to make some give some information to the members?
Yes, Chair. As you can see, the forward work programmes attached to your agenda pack. We have this meeting and then one other meeting scheduled in for 2024. As you can see, there are a few agenda items on that for the 2024 meeting, but that's subject to change depending on how officers proceed with this particular work stream. So they are draft at the moment, Chair, but as the work progresses, I'm sure you'll be updated in terms of the items for the forward work programme and in regards to if any future meetings other than the one that's already scheduled in need to be added to the forward work programme. Thank you. That's all I need to say at this point.
Thanks, Chloe. And as Chloe said, all members will be updated as and when, and feel free to add anything to the forward work programme that's relevant to this subcommittee. So are there any questions on the forward work programme before I go back to Nicola? I don't see any. It's for noting anyway, so thank you, members, for that. Okay then, Nicola, I'm coming back to you now for the, as I said, presentation to update us on the strategic planning and the work surrounding the strategic development plan. Over to you then, Nicola, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll just share my screen. Are you able to see the presentation? Yeah.
All good.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. So firstly, just to point out that the lead chief executive for the strategic development plan is Pembrokeshire and the political lead is Neath Talbot Council. The CJC agreed a number of steps in the corporate plan for 2023 to 2028. First one of which is to engage with Welsh Government officers on the draft strategic development plan manual. And to further engage with Welsh Government regarding resources. We've done both of them. I'll touch on that later. Next step then is to prepare a delivery agreement which sets out the timescales for the preparation of the SDP, and then following that then is the proper work in developing the SDP and taking it through to adoption. So just to give members an indication of what we've done to date, we've submitted informal comments to Welsh Government in respect of the SDP manual, and that was back in December 2022. We're still awaiting the formal consultation from Welsh Government on the manual. That was expected this summer, but that's passed and there's been no consultation. We have updated Welsh Government with our concerns in respect of the lack of resources to progress the SDP. And in terms of evidence base, where we're working regionally, which will set the scene for the SDP work, we've undertaken a joint housing market assessment, a regional viability study, South West Wales strategic flood consequences assessment, a national growth area refinement study following from Future Wales. We've working on a nutrient credit trading scheme on a regional basis, and then joint economic housing growth assessment for Swansea, Neath, Port Talbot. And we have re-established the Mid and South Wales Minerals and Waste Planning Group, which meets quarterly. And finally, just to remind members, this year it was set at a £20,000 budget with a due minimum in terms of the work on the SDP for this financial year. Moving on to priorities, I think our number one priority would be to discuss with Welsh Government when we can expect the release of the SDP manual so that we can progress with our delivery agreement. I think we've got a fair idea what it will say in the manual, but do we progress work on the delivery agreements where we don't know for sure what the content of that manual is? That's a decision for us to make. And then work collaboratively undertaking further regional studies which will form the evidence base for the SDP in the future. Particular issues regarding resource are the budget, so the budget for years going forward. staffing of the CJCs and how the SDP is brought forwards in future years, and then recruitment of experienced planning staff, which we're finding to be a struggle at the moment in our councils. Okay, I'll just stop sharing my screen. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Nicola. Before I open up to questions on that, as I said at the beginning, it's very early stages of this subcommittee. It's an important subcommittee for strategic planning, as you all can imagine. The difficulty is that as leaders that are on the call, like David and others, is that the funding in the CJCs is very minimal. It's very difficult. We all know and understand where Welsh Government are currently with their own difficulties on budgets. So I don't presume that there's going to be an awful lot of finance coming to help to do the work. But nevertheless, it's important work that we need to carry out. Now, I noticed on the call as well, Head of Planning in Neath, Talbot, Kerry's there. Is there any other officer who would like to add anything before I ask members if they have any questions to align what this subcommittee is all about and to sort of add a bit of meat on the bone to the presentation as well? So I don't know if there's anybody. Kerry, did you want to come in, or any other officer to come in on this?
Thank you, Leader. Well, I mean, as I said, I've apologies. I should say firstly, because I've joined late to this discussion, so apologies for that. But I did catch the majority of what Nicola was outlining, and Nicola's more than adequately covered all of the key issues. Members will be aware already, of course, that we've got an ongoing discussion around resources, and I think I've presented recently to the scrutiny CJC committee, and we had a bit of a discussion there around, I think the reality of it is, we all know the significant body of work that will come with the SDP, because it's no different to the LDP, of course, and members on the call will be more than familiar with that process. So the reality is, Chair, that until the resource issue is really bottomed out with the Welsh Government, there's not going to be any substantive progress made on the SDP. Now, we are, every opportunity we as officers get to make those points to the Welsh Government, we are making those points. And I know there's also been a degree of political lobbying as well with the Minister. And as I said, until that's now, and we're not unique, of course, in the Southwest, that is, these issues are as relevant across all of the CJC areas as well. So it's just to re-emphasise that point, Leader, but Nicola has more than adequately covered the main points.
Yeah, thanks for that, Kerry. Yeah, you're spot on. We're working with our hands tied behind our back, so I just take leads from yourselves, Nicola, and others, officers, in how we progress a subcommittee, because one thing you'll know from me is that I don't appreciate committees set up for a purpose just to have a discussion where we make no real difference. Now, there might be things we can do without the finances, but most of you will be well aware that that's limited, as sort of Kerry has alluded to there. So now I'll open it up now there anyway for any questions from members to see if there's any for Nicola, Kerry, or myself. So anybody want to come in? I see Aled got his hand up. Over to you then, Aled, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi. Nicola, just to thank you for the report and thank you for the comments made thus far. I'm just trying to be careful and diligent in terms of having a meaningful conversation at this point, bearing in mind that the information that we have is so sparse. But I do think probably from the National Parks point of view that we would want to emphasise that from our perspective, this is an important document, and that we have obligations over and above, in a sense, those included at the end in terms of impact assessments. Our Stanford obligations are there to put nature first, and I'm sure that we will want to have that highlighted in future development of this work, and to be mindful that this is not just a gathering of local authorities, but it is also a gathering that includes 2 national parks. And I look forward to that future engagement, Nicola. But I notice your due diligence here, but I do wonder how that will actually articulate itself in the future when we begin to have more information and we begin to have a serious conversation on the impact of our policies here on nature. And I think that would be something that you would expect, I'm sure, us to highlight as national parks in this subcommittee. But I'm very grateful for what has been said thus far, and I'm looking forward very much to working with you with that in mind. But diolch yn fawr iawn I chi.
Before I bring Nicola back in, Aled, it was remiss of me not to mention the national parks. 100% agree with everything you said there. They play a major role in this important subcommittee. You're spot on. I think I was just trying to outline that the difficulties without funding, which you'll all be aware of. I don't need to go on and on and on. Say it as it is, isn't it? It is a difficult time, but we'll do what we can. But the national parks are very important in all the planning that we are looking to try and achieve. So, Nicola, do you want to come back on some of the points Aled made, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to reassure members that we work with the national parks, and representatives of the national parks are here today. As councils, we're fully aware of our duty in terms of the Sanford Principle and, of course, Section 6 of the Environment Act, which would consider biodiversity and nature. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicola. Any other member got any questions on John?
Yeah,
over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and thanks, Nicola, for the presentation. I just want to re-emphasise the resources issue, Chair, if I may, and I know it's an issue that is, you know, at the forefront of all our thinking here. You've got development plans teams who are pushing forward the LDPs, you know, across the region, limited amount of staff. What discussions have taken place with Welsh Government? You alluded to some political lobbying, Nick, and also from an officer point of view, but have we had any word back from Welsh Government at all? And I am very mindful, obviously, of the budget setting that we all have to do now as we run up to setting the council tax premiums for next year as local authorities, and also Welsh Government's, you know, own restrictions on finance. So I think if we're going to, you know, be pushing forward with an SDP, which is a vital piece of work, it needs to be fully resourced, or as resourced as it can be. Otherwise, we're not going to make any progress whatsoever. And picking up on the Chair's point about meetings for meeting's sake, none of us want to do that. We want to have meaningful meetings where we're discussing topic areas in detail. So what have Welsh Government said, I suppose, is the question.
Before officers come in on what they do strategically wise, politically, I'm well aware of all leaders of all the regions, wherever they are with the CJCs, are all lobbying. Even the WLGA, you name it, and this is cross-party, and David can perhaps comment on that. But we are all working extremely hard. We recognise how important every part of the plan is. I mean, transport is right up there, and that's where part of the CJC has been prioritised because of the lack of funding to cover all aspects of the work that we deal with. But rest assured, from the political side, I've only had 15 months, but I'm a loud person, as my council colleagues and officers will know. I'm very loud. So we all certainly are lobbying the Welsh Government. They recognise the importance of not just strategic planning, transport and all other. They recognise it, but as we all know, and I don't want to digress, but 900 million overspent in year. I mean, you know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that they haven't got any money. So this is why I did touch on it, and I'm sorry, you'll get to know what I'm like. I do not like having meetings for sake of meetings without outcomes. But I'm sure, as I'm told regularly by my chief exec and others, that there's still work that needs to be done, and we lobby hard. in certain areas, and there's other sources of finance, as you know, shared prosperity funding and etc. sometimes can find ways of making a difference. So that's the political side of it. So I don't know where any officer wants to come in on the work they are doing to lobby to try and get the funding to support this particular subcommittee. So I don't know, Nicola or Kerry, or anybody want to come in? Nicola?
Yeah, in terms of officers, we meet regularly with Welsh Government, but I can see that Tom Evans from Swansea has got his hand up, and whether Tom's going to give him a bit of information about the Planning Officers Society for Wales and how they're lobbying Welsh Government.
We are okay. Over to you then, Tom, please.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Nick. I thought I'd come in there. So yeah, I manage placemaking and planning matters in Swansea. I'm also vice chair of the Planning Officers Society Wales, and as Nick says, we make sure that this is a standing item on our agenda, planning at a regional scale and specifically advancing work on producing the plan itself, and we include that on not only for our own quarterly meetings as a grouping of chief officers, but also in our regular discussions with Welsh Government officials, including the head of plannings at the head of planning of chief planner within Welsh Government. And we're quite honest in those discussions in terms of setting out what we consider to be the limitations in respect of the absence of funding and of resources to be able to advance it. What we have recognised and emphasised is that we will continue to work very closely, collaboratively across the region. I'm sure the southeast of and the north and mid Wales have said the same things, really, in terms of having that very sort of close working that we do anyway, as on a cross-boundary basis. And some of the work that Nick set out in her presentation in terms of that cross-boundary studies that have been taken forward over the last 12 months, 18 months, they're needed for our own respective development plans, and we'll be doing them anyway to an extent. But some of those have been important for as underpinning what will be a future regional plan, and that's the stuff that we've identified to Welsh Government to say we will continue to do that and make sure that those projects are fit to underpin a strategic plan, if and when that can be produced. But I think we've been a bit more, again, we've been honest to say when it comes to the delivery agreement, which is this kind of initial output, statutory output of an SDP, then really that relies, in order to produce something meaningful, it relies on having some understanding of how you're going to resource something and over what times you can come up with all sorts of stuff, put it in a document and say we'll do X, Y, and Z over a number of years. But you've got to have the confidence, really, if you're going to go ahead and produce that for say for meaningful discussion, then that's got to be achievable, and that's what we've highlighted as officers and chief officers to say that that's where our concerns are, really, to advance that in absence of knowledge about the funding.
Thanks for that information, Tom. It's very helpful and grateful to the work that you were doing. So thank you for that. It is important. Will, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments, if I may, and it leads on from what Tom was saying there. I think the CJC will be setting its budget again for the following financial year later this year. I recall the discussions the CJC had last December on setting the budget for this financial year, and leaders concluded that they needed to be conservative in that regard, given the financial constraints last year, and I very much suspect they may approach it in a similar manner this year, and I don't want to presuppose the outcome. I seem to recall that in the budgetary calculations, and I haven't got them at hand, there was some analysis on the costing of the SDP, and I don't know whether Nicola, whether you've got that at hand or not, and can recall what we estimated the cost of developing the SDP would be, outside of those costs that would naturally have been absorbed by the individual local authorities with studies they would have done for their own LDPs that could be used by the SDP, but what the total cost of developing the SDP would be and how that would translate into annualized costs over time, and then what the deadline is for us to deliver, or the timeline is for us to deliver the SDP, so that we know when we would need to be making decisions on resource, if that resource was not forthcoming from Welsh Government.
Thanks for that, Will. Very helpful. Nicola, do you have any information on the points Will has raised?
Yeah, I think there was a report to a previous CJC meeting which highlighted, I think, for the first year following the delivery agreements, which could well be next year or the year after, it would be approximately 200,000 an annual cost, then rising to a maximum of 500,000. And then as the SDP progresses and it gets adopted, that cost reduces. I can share that info. I'll have to find that information and share that information separately.
That's fine. I'd be grateful for sharing of that information, but that shows the extent of what Will has said, really, is that it's quite a costly exercise, important exercise, but it's where the money comes from. And local government, obviously, under extreme pressures with budget settings, as you'll all be aware of. So I suppose it's a start of what we're doing, and I can only re-emphasise really important work, and anything that members can think of that helps, please don't feel free to feed into the system here, so that we can move forward with what we're trying to achieve. So can I see if there's any other further questions for officers or on the presentation? I don't see any. Okay, then I do like meetings and only take half an hour. So that takes me down to item 6. I currently dealt with the forward work programme. Is urgent items. I have no urgent items this afternoon, so it only remains for me to thank you for your attendance. Very much appreciated, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon, whatever